Hey everyone, it is Grayson Hester, Communications Director of the Faith Community, the pundit on Holy Smokes podcast. Recently finished second year of Divinity School at McAfee School of Theology, and fellow hunker downer, as Leslie Jordan likes to call us, coming at you live from the Faith Community's page once again for Homebound Homily. Now, I did this last week, but the internet has a demon in it and cut out at the last minute. So the punchline, as it were, of the sermon did not land, which is why I'm back again doing it for a second time. So if you were here last week and you heard most of the sermon, I apologize, but hopefully the end will be intact. And then if you're new to this, hello, good to see you. As you join, please say hey. Let me know when you have participated in our live stream. So this is, as I said, Homebound Homily, which is part of our Daily Bread series. The Daily Bread series is essentially our offering to you during this time of quarantine, self-isolation, pandemic, however it is you're relating to the quarantine and the pandemic right now, because I know it varies from region to region, job to job, person to person. So however you are relating to it at the moment, we are happy to be here providing you such things as the Homebound Homily, such things as prayer, our new installment, which is Time to Treat Yourself, in reference to our favorite show, one of my favorite shows, Parks and Recreation. Therapy Thursday, where we talk about therapeutic advice on getting through life in general and in particular a pandemic. And also, we're talking about Top 5 Friday, which is a new thing we're offering, where whatever it is you like, whether it is music, movies, food, what's in your bag, the top 5 essentials for what you got in your bag, or securing the bag, whichever one. We're just sharing what our top 5 things are. Everyone loves lists and everyone loves the things they love. So we are doing that on Friday. And Sundays, we have Corona Cookbook, which is essentially quarantine-proof recipes for the chefs that are tired of cooking every single meal, for those of us who miss dearly going out and eating at restaurants. It's a great way to share quarantine-proof and budget-friendly recipes. So this, again, is Daily Bread. I'm Grayson Hester, pronouns he, him, his, with the Faith Community, sharing a sermon that I shared last week about Holy Saturday, of all things. It was inspired by Christian Smith. And again, whenever you are our pastor, Christian Smith, whenever you join, please just let me know by saying hello. And then whenever you are joining, please share this video. Please share this video so that others can see the good stuff we got going on here. And then also, if you haven't already, consider texting disruptive, DISRUPTIVE, to 31996. That'll get you started with our newsletter so you can stay up to date on all of the great things that we have going on here at the Faith Community. And finally, we have this Saturday our Bible and Beyond series. Our context sub-series, where we believe that if you take a text out of its context, all you have left is a con. And that'll be resuming with a study of Malachi and the question, are non-tithers criminals? So if you don't give your 10% tithe, are you a criminal? That'll be interesting to see, and Christian Smith is leading that conversation. And then tomorrow, we are resuming Holy Smokes, not the podcast. Hey, Ariana, good to see you. We are resuming not the podcast, the conversation via Zoom. So if you haven't registered on Eventbrite yet, please do, so you can be sure to have access to our conversation taking place at 5:00 p.m. EDT tomorrow via Zoom. And our conversation will be what it was in our podcast, which is race and privilege in pandemic. Because although we are expected to stay home, racism is still allowed to roam free. So that'll be an interesting and totally non-controversial conversation, which you can also look out for from our podcast, where we talked about it on Holy Smokes, the podcast, last week. All right. So if you're just now joining, say hey. Please be sure to share this video. Text disruptive to 31996 if you haven't already. And be on the lookout for the rest of our Daily Bread offerings, including 2 new segments, Time to Treat Yourself on Wednesday and Top 5 Friday on Friday. And then also be on the lookout for Holy Smokes, the podcast, Holy Smokes Conversation tomorrow via Zoom, and the Bible and Beyond also via Zoom this Saturday. And with that, we will commence with this homebound homily, which again is a retread of what I did last week. Hopefully the demon and the internet has left so the sermon can be heard in its entirety. And with that, we begin. So the text that we're looking at today is Luke 23:54 through 56. I'm reading from the NRSV, and it is as follows. It was the day of preparation, and the Sabbath was beginning. The women who had come with him from Galilee followed, and they saw the tomb and how his body was laid. Then they returned and prepared spices and ointments. On the Sabbath, they rested according to the commandment. Something about camping at the edge of a glacier makes sleep hard to come by. The tiny tent I shared with my dad, barely big enough to fit our bodies, but just small enough to perch atop the pile of rocks we called our campsite, radiated with our heat. Yet I could still see my breath drift into the crisp mountain air, moonlight streaming through the thin canvas. It was likely 3 a.m, although I really hoped it was 4, because that would mean 5 o'clock was just an hour away, and something about 5 a.m. makes waking up a little more acceptable. 4, as we know, is just ridiculous. I laid there tens of thousands of feet above sea level on Sahali Glacier, waiting for the right time to escape my dad's rumbling snores and watch the sun rise over North Cascades National Park in Washington State. After 10 hours went by, my phone informed me it was 4:02 a.m., close enough. So as quietly as I could, which in a tent is roughly the volume of a car explosion, I wriggled out of my sleeping bag, crept to the front, gingerly unzipped the fly, and trod into the vast outside, the pale blue morning greeting my weary eyes. And from here, my brother joined me, and we watched the sunrise, streaks of gold, grapefruit pink, ocean sky, neither day nor night, sunrise slowly broke through, and it was all we could do but to watch in awe and wait. Now, I could keep going with this overlong anecdote and tell you about the herd of mountain goats that greeted us upon daybreak, but as adorable as that was, I'd kind of missed the point. This sermon about Holy Saturday, about Jesus' being dead, began with a story about a hiking trip I took last summer because A, I admittedly love talking about hiking, and B, it's not often I watch the sunrise, or set for that matter. It took me going miles into the Washington wilderness, stripped of anything I couldn't carry on my back, removed from all cellular communication, lying wide awake at 3 or 4 or 5 in the morning on top of a glacier to finally be like, you know what? Maybe this miraculous show we get every morning actually is worth my time. But I think what's important to note about this story is how I responded to this most arresting natural masterpiece. My brother and I couldn't go back to sleep, it was too late for that, but neither could we begin making breakfast or tearing down our camp. For that, it was much too early. All we could do, all we knew to do, was sit and wait and watch and receive whatever it was this solar symphony had to give us. Our society doesn't know how to handle such moments. And it's not just that we're too busy. It's at a more base level, our society has no understanding of, no appreciation for, no space for the liminal. Now, liminal is a very citrusy sounding word that essentially means in between. Sunrise, as I've depicted it above, is a liminal space, neither night nor day, some combination of both, some entirely new thing devoid of either. The time between graduating and starting the next step is a liminal space that many of us are familiar with. They are gray areas, periods of time that bid us to wait expectantly for what might come next. And I submit that pandemic, the one that we're living in right now, is one such liminal space. Just like Holy Saturday. And true to cultural form, it gets completely overlooked. Between the dramatic despair of Friday and the euphoria of Sunday, the unremarkable grief of Saturday this dramatic despair of Friday and Sunday, the unremarkable grief of Saturday all but evaporates from our liturgical calendar. Jesus has died. Jesus is not yet raised. I'll go ahead and give us some credit. To be fair, the Gospels don't say too much about this period of time. All I could find, and all Christian could find when he preached about this a few months ago, in Luke was the passage we read earlier, and the only action to be found there was preparation and resting. Compared to crucifixion and resurrection, preparing and resting just sounds boring. Why even talk about it? Now, I have to admit, this is partially why I've come to love Holy Saturday. In a culture too sleepy for sunrises and too busy for sunsets, too colorblind and binary to see the grays, and simply too infantile for the both and, we sleep on Holy Saturday too. We cast it aside. Think about it. When was the last time you saw your social media feeds trending with hashtag Holy Saturday posts, or your church pulling out all the stops for a Holy Saturday service? Unless, of course, you go to the faith community. It may as well not be there, because if there's one thing we don't like or know how to celebrate or honor, it's a dead Jesus. We like a bloodied, dying Jesus, crushed under the weight of the divine child abuse we're convinced is necessary for us to get into heaven scot-free. We especially like a white, risen, pristine, glittery Jesus who went ahead and died to get all that icky, dirty justice stuff done for us, so we don't have to raise a finger except maybe to vote. But we don't know what to do with a dead Jesus for whom the cross is a fresh memory and the empty tomb is a false hope. We don't know what to do with the and of resurrection, and therefore we satisfy ourselves with death or resurrection. Good Friday is death, Easter Sunday is resurrection, and ne'er the twain shall meet. It's a binary, an either or, a Christian civil war with clearly drawn sides. Except it's not. We've always been taught to believe in death and resurrection, two realities coterminous and coexistent, interwoven with one another in a theological quilt that covers all of reality. Holy Saturday is the and in a world that much prefers the or. Good Friday is sad, Easter is happy, and our current situation is the world is on fire and there's no hope to be found. We much prefer binaries because they make reality digestible, understandable, and therefore unreal. For example, a society that can't bring itself to wake up for a sunrise and appreciate the beauty of the either or, neither or, is one that will gun down non-binary people for simply being who they are. A society that cannot fathom death and resurrection happening at the same time, occurring simultaneously, is one that cannot tolerate two men getting married, or people of color existing unshackled and emancipated, or disabled people retaining any sense of dignity. When you bifurcate reality, when these two categories are so separate, then dignity is only to be found in the able section. Emancipation is only to be found in the white side. Love is only for the straight area. If you must define reality by what it isn't, then what it actually is will come to you as a great shock. And so we neglect all those on the other side, all those on the Good Friday death side, while we hoard the life, the resurrection, all for ourselves. Jesus was non-binary in his body, neither human nor divine, but yet both, yet some mixture of neither, kind of all, and to no one's surprise, an empire much like our own killed him for it. So we either talk about his divinity or his humanity, rarely paying attention to the scandal of the and. We cannot fathom the liminality of infleshed divinity, and so we don't try. It's appropriate then that we cannot also fathom, and therefore choose to ignore, the liminality of Holy Saturday. To focus on it would require of us any capacity to sit in grief, to wait with anticipation, to honor hopelessness and pain and wondering and wailing as holy offerings. To focus on it would require of us an ability to see the resurrection in the death and the death in the resurrection, to see the dark within the light and vice versa, to see, in a word, at the sunrise. Where might we see sunrises and sunsets in this time of global pandemic? How might we lean into a Holy Saturday mentality in a world of Friday, Sunday binaries, of death or resurrections? We are in the midst of a crisis, no doubt about it. The economic, spiritual, and mental tolls are frankly incalculable, particularly to Black and brown communities. What merely 2 months ago was a blip on our collective news feeds is now all anyone talks about. The world, seemingly overnight, changed. The new normal was started to birth, and, if we're lucky, nothing will ever be the same again. Shouldn't we go back to normal, though? Why did I say if we're lucky? Isn't that what we're all staying inside for, losing our jobs for, homeschooling our kids for, to, at some point, get back to normal? My friends, to that question, I offer a firm but kind no. Chiefly because we can't go back to normal. That life is gone. It breathed its last the minute coronavirus infected its first victim. Hey, Marielle. But more to my point here today, beloved, is that we shouldn't go back to normal. It is a moral imperative for us to see within this time of death, this Good Friday, and dying, the resurrection, the Easter in our very midst. Because the world that brutalized our earth, that devalued labor, that did not make time for family or friends, that privileged busyness over blessedness, that world that was socially distancing itself long before it became a mandate, that world that was quickly bringing all of humanity to the brink of a climate crisis oblivion, that world needed to die. It wasn't that great. I mean, from rush hour to climate crisis to economic inequality, the normal that we've left, we might romanticize and nostalgicize about it, but really, was it that great? I think there's something new that had to happen, and fast. And this is not to downplay the very real social consequences, the disproportionate ways this is affecting Black and brown communities and those living in abusive situations, and those LGBTQ plus people forced to shelter with parents who are more like storms. The death is real, and friends, it is loud. I'm not saying that. What I am saying, though, is that resurrection is pretty damn loud, too. It is not an or. It is not its own discrete, separate category, its own reality to be seen some other day. It is an and. It is here, too. Death is here. Resurrection is here. We are in a Holy Saturday moment. It is here in the earth that for maybe the first time since the Industrial Revolution is getting a chance to show us her restorative power. Resurrection is here as it always is in the little things. The God that chose to enflesh God's self in a baby is choosing to enflesh God's self once again in similarly small and seemingly insignificant things. The neighbors being neighborly, the humans remembering how to be human, the sunsets finally seen, the pace slowing down, the stuck places of political stagnation, hegemony, and polarization finally getting loosened. I submit that feet slipping on rocky ground as they are now are merely feet free to dance a new rhythm. Resurrection is here too, and it portends of a new world being born. A new world that will certainly carry its own deaths for sure, but will also usher in unforeseen and heretofore never seen new lives. We now have a better chance than maybe ever before to create a new world, to imagine wildly and dream audaciously, because all that had stopped us, all that had stalled us, is revealed as absurd. Like, the world we lived in is absurd and therefore can be changed. It's not set in stone, so maybe we can write a new stone. Death or resurrection says, abandon hope. 2020 is a dumpster fire. There's no meaning. Death and resurrection says, 2020 is the year in which the world changed because it had to. There's hope alongside the hardship, faith alongside the fear, and peace even in a pandemic. And the women, of course, and our texts and in our everyday lives show us the way of how to live in a Holy Saturday moment. They show us that on such moments, these liminal times, times between dying and rising, these and moments, we prepare and we rest. We rest from the hyperactivity we let define us, or the inhumanity we slowly let creep in, or the non-real things we prioritized over the real things. We rest from the world as it once was. We take a break, if we're able, and we rest because that's what grief requires us to do. Grieving is a bodily shutdown, an emotional clarion call to drawing inward and slowing down. And Lord knows there is no shortage of things to grieve right now. But we also prepare. That's what the text says. They rested and they prepared. We prepare to name and claim the little resurrections we see all around us. the spring weather, the blossoms, the pristine skies, the restored connections, the revitalized humanity. We prepare to face a new world boldly and imaginatively, knowing that chaos, as it was in creation, is God's best canvas. We, the dreamers and poets and teachers and activists, prepare to write a fresh narrative befitting of a new reality, one that says no to the sins of the past and yes to the promises of the future. We prepare because when the pandemic ends, and hallelujah, it will certainly end one day, we will not simply emerge from our homes. We will rise from our collective tombs, ready to show our scars as Jesus did and have people believe our witnesses to the possibility and indeed the promise of life and life abundant. We will create the world we've been dreaming of, and this pandemic may be the best opportunity we've ever had. But until then, we wait, and we have our good days, and our bad days, and our productive days, and our Tiger King for the 3rd time and the office for the 6th time days, and our I feel anxious and have no idea why days, and I can't get out of bed, and time feels so weird, and my sleep schedule is all messed up. Those are all real, and we will wait with them. But hopefully, our days, and hopefully we will have our days that we start to see the non-binary reality of nature, that death is here and resurrection is here, and that there is darkness in the light and light in the darkness, and maybe, just maybe, we'll wake up in time to see a sunset. May it ever be so. All right, friends, thank you for joining us for Homebound Homily. Like I said, like and share this video. Text Disruptive to 31996 if you haven't already. Maybe see you tomorrow for Holy Smokes at 5 o'clock p.m. Eastern. See you on Saturday for Bible and Beyond Context, where we ask the question, are non-tithers criminals, on Saturday at 4. But until then, as Lester Holt says to end every NBC Nightly News, take care of yourself and each other. I love all of you. Have a great night.